Hello, Facebook land. We welcome you to this wonderful experience we're all about to have. We are live in living color with some gentlemen friends who are also husbands and fathers and who are going to give their expressions from an honest and candid place as priest, provider, protector, encourager, confidant, fathers, grandparents, all of that in between. And so that is covered in phase 8 in my book when we talk about the covenant between me and this handsome man behind me. But I'm going to leave it to the guys to give you their perspective because only they can give their perspective. Amen. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Khalid, our wonderful host with the mostest. And have at it, guys. Have a good time because I'm what? I'm going to be on YouTube talking about y'all. Okay.
All right. Well, let's get this party started, gentlemen. All right. So tonight we're going to talk about us, the men, the husbands, and for me, the ex-husband, and give our perspective on life and our life in committed relationships and marriages. And we're going to give the male perspective. All right. So we want you to tune in, pull out your binders because we're going to have a lot of information. Have about 5 or 6 pens ready in case the ink runs out. And I think this is very important, especially for the ladies in our listening audience, right? Because I often see that women take advice about men from guess who? Other women, right? Well, here, tonight's experience, we're going to get the male perspective. So that's why we want you to pay attention closely to what we have to say here and really take in our truth. And that's the key word tonight, our truth, our perspective, what we have dealt with, what we are dealing with, and from our perspective. So, gentlemen, you ready?
Yes, sir.
so let me start. We're going to do the introductions, and then we're going to go right into our conversation. So I'm going to let each one of you all introduce yourself. Tell our listening audience how long you've been married and whatever information you feel that the audience needs to know about you. So let's start off with you, King Gino.
All right. What's going on, everybody?
Hey.
Me and King have been married going on 12 years this year. Man, time is flying.
Yes.
But, yeah, we've been working this thing and continuing to work it and continuing to learn new things and continue to try to grow closer and just continue to do the things so we could be like, some of them brothers there that's been married 20 plus years and things like that.
Right.
But as a man continuing to learn my place, that's the thing. That's a continual that's a learning thing that's constant, So you don't never arrive to that. In my opinion, you don't never arrive to be that husband, the head of the home that you're supposed to be. That's constantly learning.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, brother. Okay, let's go with Minister Terrence. Tell us how long you've been married and any other important information you want our listening audience to know about you.
Appreciate it. Been married 22 years. I don't put a demarcation on it as to whether or not all of those years have been blissful. Because there have been some dark days. There have been some moments where I was done and she was done. And thankfully, we were never in that place at the same time. I agree with Brother Gino that it's a journey. It's rising and falling. It's ebbs and flows. It comes and goes. And the goal is to be the best individual that you can be, so that you can present that to her, and then the two of you can then move forward going in the same direction with more power, with more clarity and more focus. But yeah, that's it for me.
Got it. Got it. Great insight. Great insight. Okay, Brother Michael, tell us who you are and how long you've been married, brother.
I'm Michael Brown, and my wife and I reside in Lexington, Kentucky. We've been married for 24 years.
Okay.
Our anniversary will be coming up in November, and I will be the first one to concur with all the other guys. It is absolutely a learning process. It's a constant work in progress. Like Brother Terrence just said, there's not all good days. There's been days when, like he just said, we're done. I'm out. I can't do this anymore. And I'll be the first one to admit, I grew up in a household. My dad died when I was 4. He got drowned. So my mom remarried. And my mom remarried a gentleman who had been married 3 times. So in my household, divorce was not something that was a foreign concept. So in many cases, and with me being an attorney too, it's real easy to fall into, I'm done, I'm out. And I have to give my wife credit. She grew up in a household. Her parents were really committed. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but they were committed. And because of my wife just really having to stick to itness and determination to keep us together, by the grace of God, we've been together for 24 years. And I grew up in a household. It really wasn't modeled for me what it looked like for the husband to be the leader of the household. I was 10 when my mom remarried. So my impression from 4 years old to 10, my mom wore all the hats. She was the mom, she was the dad, she was the leader of the household. Even after my mom remarried, and I'm not knocking my stepdad, he was good in his own way, what he understood. He had a dysfunctional household that he grew up in, but he just didn't really have a concept of leading. So it wasn't modeled for me. My mom, even though she was married, I still looked to my mom, really, as the leader of the household. She took care of many of the responsibilities. It was just not what needed to be modeled for me, but he just didn't know any better. So when I got married, this whole concept of me being the leader and provider and covering my wife, it was a foreign concept. And then you factor in, I'm an only child too. That just made it even more difficult. So we've been together 24 years, but it has absolutely been a learning process and a work in progress. And by the grace of God, we're still together. And I wouldn't take anything for my wife, for my kid.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for your feedback, brother. All right, Brother George, you're next. How many years have you been married, and what do you want to, what's your initial input for this discussion?
25 years plus. Wouldn't trade it in for nothing in the world. How can you say I had a second chance at it? 16 years of age, I'll share with you, was married. My first wife in high school, had my first child. So trying to be grown up and do what I was raised to do is take care of your responsibilities. So at 16, I gave it a shot. Made it work for 5 years. But like you said, along the way, bumps and bruises, simply because I didn't know what I know now. Being a young person, going after it for the first time, how can you say learning it together, actually learning what it was to be a husband, what it was to become a father. A lot of things I was afraid of on my way up of learning. A lot of times I wanted to turn and become a teenager again, but yet something within me that the way I was raised just wouldn't allow it.
Okay.
So gave it the best shot. So now with the second opportunity, God has blessed me with the wife that I wanted, that I needed, that is compatible to me. So, yes, the first time was an experience. The second time wouldn't be a mistake because I learned the do's and the don'ts, and I applied what I learned from my experience and what I don't want in my relationship. So I'll share with you.
Excellent feedback. The second time around.
All right.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Lastly, Sean, tell us how many years you've been married, brother, and what's insight that you want to give the audience about yourself?
I'm Sean Pritchett. Hello, everyone. I've been married 18 years to the same wife, Natasha Pritchett. One thing about myself is that I'm a committed and loving man. I love hard. I enjoy family. And so that's pretty much all to me, man. It's a lot to me, but one thing that stands out about me is that I enjoy being with my family. It's they say the first year is always your rough year. I had 3 of those first years. I had 3 first rough years, and I'm still here. By the way, no, but I just yeah, 3 of those first rough years. A lot of people don't make it throughout their first year, but I thank God that He gave me the grace to make it through 3 years of being, going through it. But I'm still here 18 years because I really enjoy family. I always wanted to have what I didn't see growing up in a single mom home, and so I was determined to be what I didn't see and to provide what I wanted to see.
Excellent. And I think that's a lot of our testimony.
Yeah.
A lot of our testimony. Okay. You know what, guys? I did the math, right? Where is it? You all have been married and combined 101 years.
Whoa.
101 years. Absolutely. And that's something to brag on. That's something that is bragging rights to, and that's something that we don't talk about with Black men, our pride in being married. And the honesty that says, hey, it hasn't always been a bed of roses, but we're still here. And so, with my testimony, I'm divorced, right? So I'm the lone wolf in here, but I'm an advocate for marriage. And in my work, I am a social worker, and I'm also a marriage therapist in private practice. And I go in and I go hard for married couples, right? Because I believe in marriage. Now, is it for me anymore? Nope. And I can own that. Maybe later on when I'm 80 years old and we can combine the security check. Maybe so. But right now, I'm enjoying this chapter. And the reason why I'm bringing that out too is because we're an eclectic, right? You have single men, married men, divorced, widowed, we represent, the whole spectrum, but we all still have something to contribute, especially to the conversation in regards to love and commitment and marriage and relationships. So with that, let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes. So, Brother Arnold, I want to start with you. Let's talk about being a provider. Right? Okay. Give us your perspective and your insight on being the provider of the home for your family.
Okay. So you know what? I wanted to hit on this, what Brother Mike was saying about how he came up and how his stepfather was. I experienced something similar. My father, and this is going to flow right into being a provider. My father, mother and father was married. Like when my mother passed, they were 48 years. Wow. And what happened with my father, he was moving along real good and he took sick and couldn't work anymore. So when he could not work, a lot of the things fell on my mom's. But what happened, he gave up headship of the home because he felt like he was less than a man because he couldn't provide for his home, which didn't change anything because he was still a man. He was still the head of the home, but he felt that because he couldn't work, that was a heavy blow to him. So we actually saw, me and my brothers actually saw him give up the headship in the home, and the pressure that went on my mom's from him just kind of giving it up. You know, he was there, but the best way I could put it, he was there, but he wasn't there. And no, don't get me wrong, he was an excellent father. But when that took place, he was still an excellent father, but he was absent far as that leadership role. And so from that point, I learned a lot from that growing up. And I seen what it was like when you're supposed to, what a husband's supposed to be, far as a provider, and what not to be, And the thing is, everybody had their little issues that they happen in life. It just happened a different way with him, and he took it a different way. But going on to the provider, from what I saw and from what I know now, the provider is basically, to provide is basically to supply, to have something to start, to supply something. So as the provider of the home, that's what we are, and it goes from the financial part, but then not only there, it goes for providing the love, providing the leadership. And when it goes far as the leadership, meaning just the direction, that God would have the direction for that family to go. So, to make it short, providing is basically to supply. Now, one thing that has been a big thing out here now is people have taken that definition of provider and put man in the position of God. And what I mean by that, when a lot of people now think about marriage, a man being a provider, meaning that man's supposed to pay everything, take care of he's supposed to do all of the things. He's the breadwinner, he does everything. And that's been the case from years on, and the bottom line is, there's nothing wrong with that if the man chooses to do that, or if he can do that. But I think a lot of pressure has been put on the husband, and I've heard a lot of women talk about that as well. If a man can't take care of me, and when they say take care of, they mean to pay everything, to provide every single thing, then they don't want to be bothered with them. And nowhere in the Bible, if we're looking at it from a biblical perspective, nowhere in the Bible does that stand that way. There's nowhere in the Bible that you will find that the man is providing and taking care of everything. What you will find is that if a person doesn't provide for his family, it's worse than an unbeliever. He has denied the faith, and is worse than an unbeliever. But that speaks, when you look at the different languages of that, that speaks to not only that man, but that woman as well. So it's basically, and nowadays how things go, a lot of times it takes two, but just to clear up that is not the definition of a provider. But again, if a man chooses to do that, then perfect, that's fine. But at the same time, that shouldn't be the pressure that we look at as that man being a provider. So, again, looking at that, the provider, as far as the love, the example, the leader, the whole thing, you have to be that example.
Okay, very good. And before we move on to the next topic, does anyone want to piggyback and give some more insight in regards to that subject matter of being a provider?
Yeah, I would like to offer the fact that in this day and age, Black women are the most educated demographic on the planet right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of Black women who are earning more than their spouses. That still does not abdicate the man from his responsibility of providing for that family. But I think there's sometimes a disconnect in understanding the amount of pressure that places on a man, depending on the example that he saw when he was growing up. And so if If you grew up and your father, you know, paid all the bills, paid the mortgage, put the gas in the car, washed the car, changed the oil, he did all of those things. Unconsciously, we as children tend to adopt those habits as our new normal. That's our normal. And the reality is, even though your wife may make more money than you can still lead your family. You can still provide all of the things that Brother Gino was talking about with your family. You can still provide those things. It does not. You don't get excused from that on God's report card.
Right.
Very good. Any other comments to the subject, gentlemen, before we move on? All right. Well, to put in my 2 cents about provider, I remember, because I grew up in a single parent home, never met my dad one day of my life, and I remember the importance of the message that my mom passed on to me about when you becoming an adult, being able to provide for you and yours, and being responsible, right? So that was the extra word that was married to being a provider. And I had television dads, right? So James Evans Sr., Heathcliff Huxtable, Uncle Phil, because I didn't have the role model in the house, right? And what I saw that each one of the dads did is they provided for their families. So it was etched in my head that when I became a husband and a dad, provision. And you're right, where I made the mistake is I thought I had to do it all or be the main one. But then I understood after the divorce, it's about the partnership. Because I can provide certain things, and then your wife provides certain things. So to be honest, just like you said, Brother Gino, the provision should be on both, especially when you having a partner-based marriage. So I really want that to be the takeaway. It's on both, because you both are providing. Okay. All right. So now let's go to the next subject matter. So Brother George, we got you down to discuss being a dad and a granddad. Ooh. And the importance of your role in those.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Being the dad and the granddad, 2 of the greatest things in the world. Let's start with being the dad. Okay. My pop was always there. Like I said, I don't want to make it sound like I'm gloating. You know what I mean? My pops was always there. My mom was always there. And like you said, it goes to where you were, how you were raised, and all of that. Well, in the household, like I said, there was 9 of us, but we were the Waltons. It didn't matter what was going on the outside, as long as the inside was happy. And that's where I picked up all that. Like I said, no matter what it looked like, Pops always made it look like it was the good times. And I don't know anything else but to do the same thing for my kids, to steer them the right way. Put it this way, to me, for my child to outlive me, pretty much most of the time feels like I've done my job, because they're able to go out and do for themselves and provide for themselves. That's the father part. That part where Gino and Terrence came in saying about as far as the provision, it was a norm. It was something you didn't even think about. You just done it. It was a reaction, because it's what I've always seen. My dad get up, go to work, come home, tend to his business, boom, go do what they do with his friends, come back home. You see what I mean? So and that's what I picked up. And grandfather, awesome, because all his brothers, all of my grandparents that I knew were always there. We could go out on the weekends when the parents got tired of us. They always had one of the houses to throw us at. And all the grandmothers weren't good. Okay, because we had some that were wicked and some that I got in trouble because I opened my mouth and said things that I shouldn't have said because I've seen grown-ups say certain things, and at that time I felt like it was my place to say what I said, but it cost me. But like I said, to be a father and a grandfather, it is it's an honor. Okay. It's an honor to be able to raise my grandsons and give them the right, what I believe and what I was raised on, direction. Okay. As that grandfather, because right now these kids, no, they're like you said, grandma's 35 years old and she has no idea of what it is when you say grandma, because she's still out getting her groove and doing what they do, and they don't have time for the kids. So now that's our role. We're becoming our grandparents. If we want our children to grow and to be right, then we have to step in and do that. We have to be daddy. We have to be grandpa. Sometimes we have to be the brother in the street, knock them out. We have to do what we have to do to give them that opportunity to live.
You speaking it, brother.
That's how I feel about it. Yes.
Got you. I love it. I absolutely love it. I've always heard this thing about being a grandparent is that, man, I could be with the grandbabies all day long, but they go back.
That's the best part. That's the best part. You can take them home. Yes, sir.
Right. Absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now, George, are you the only granddad on the panel? Any other granddad?
I don't have any grandkids.
Okay, me neither. And I bet not have enough for at least another 10 years. There's gonna be some trouble. Absolutely. But I want some other of our guest panelists talk about how you feel about fatherhood. Any perspective you may want to give.
I would still say I was sort of, when I got married and once we had kids, you sort of think that just because you had the kids, you really know how to be a father. And and as we've all said, it's a constant work in progress, and so much of it depends on what's been modeled in front of you. We were talking about a minute ago providers. My stepdad was a hard worker, blue collar, worked in a factory. If it was any overtime, he was signing up for it. In his mind, he thought being a good father and a husband was just providing for the financial needs of the household.
Right.
And he did a good job of that. Even after he lost his job in a strike incident, I mean, he had multiple jobs just to keep the household afloat. But being a father and being a husband, being a provider is much, much more than just providing financially. Right. It's providing for the spiritual needs of the household, the emotional needs of the wife and the kids, being there in crisis and providing security and a steady hand, and being able to have a discussion and discuss tough issues. One of the things that bothered me was my stepdad, never abusive, would never lay a hand on my mom. But if they had a bit of a disagreement, his way of dealing with it was, I'm just going to walk out. And he'd walk out and leave, be gone the rest of the afternoon into the evening, hang out with his buddies and come back home, but the issue was never resolved. And I thought that was so disrespectful. And I swore up and down when I got to be married and had a wife and kids, I would never do that. But that's when it really dawned on me how much what was modeled in front of me had an effect, even though I didn't intend for it to, because I found myself in marriage, even now, and with the kids, sometimes wanting to avoid tough issues, walk out, go away, and sweep the issue under the rug. And so that's not what I intended, but what was modeled in front of me had a profound effect. And that's something I'm working through and working on now, is being able to better communicate, better able to meet my wife and kids where they are, have a discussion with them, and meet their not just financial needs, but psychological, social, emotional needs as well. So that's my take on
Absolutely. All right, Gino.
I was just gonna say, man, bro, you hitting it on the head. It's funny you talk about some things, and I was just thinking about the same
Yes.
thing he's talking about, how what we see in the home coming up. Although we don't like it, we find ourselves in that same situation, doing the same thing that we
Correct.
saw. I
Correct.
remember saying quite a few times that I'll never do that when I get married. And I find myself fighting myself not to do that. I mean, and the funny thing about it is, when the situation arises and I find myself doing it, and I sit back and I just have to say, wow, this is rough. This is the same thing I said I don't want to do.
Right.
And much as I didn't like seeing it, I found myself fighting, not doing it myself.
Right.
So it's very important. Another part of that, provision is that leadership being that example as that father, because whatever you do, your kids going to see that, and that's what they're going to follow. And that's what they're going to struggle with at a later time, as we go through it ourselves from what our parents did.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for me to wrap up the subject, if you know me, you know my daughter Anaya. That's my heart, soul, and everything in between. And life began when on 8/21/02 at 12:36 a.m. That's when my new life began, And and then the contradiction is that I worked for DCFS for the longest, right? So I would see abused and neglected children. And it would just make me wonder, even before I had a child, how can people do something to God's gift to you? And then it hit me as I did social work year after year, is that these are the things that these parents was role modeled with their parents. In DCFS, we are now seeing generations of families in DCFS, right? But why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we, right? So we really got to be proactive and pay attention to what we pour out there. And our parenting just doesn't stop in our home. We have to parent our community.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I have a daughter. So what happens is I've been mentoring young men ever since my baby's been in the world, because if I could complain about the young men out here, what am I doing to help get them in order?
All right.
That's right.
Because I need somebody to marry my daughter one day, right?
That's
So I think we need to really pay attention to those things and how we role model in general. All right, so next, Minister Terrence, let's talk about the role of a pastor, priest, and the head of a household, and what you teach and pour out there in your spiritual community.
Man, I think this, I don't know why she gave me this topic. It's the area where I struggle the most.
Wow. But that's why I did, right?
And the reason I struggle with it is because I have ebbs and flows in my own walk with Christ.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to lead your spouse to a destination or in a direction that you yourself struggle going in. And so I think that's something often that goes unnoticed or undiscussed. The spiritual challenges that men face, just being a man in this world and trying to do right, trying to live right, trying to honor Christ with our lives. It's a challenge. I liken it to synchronized swimming. On the surface, it looks all coordinated, everybody doing their thing, but underwater, everybody's trying to stay afloat. And the reality is, the challenge that we're given in Ephesians chapter 4, I'm going to read it in your hearing for a few moments. from the Message Bible because it's very convicting. Verse 21 says, out of respect for Christ, be courteously reverent to one another. Wives, understand and support your husbands in ways that show your support for Christ. The husband provides leadership to the wife the way Christ does to his church, not by domineering, but by cherishing. So just as the church submits to Christ as he exercises such leadership, wives should likewise submit to their husbands. Husbands, go all out in your love for your wives, exactly as Christ did for the church. A love marked by giving, not getting. Christ's love makes the church whole. His words evoke her beauty. Everything he does and says is designed to bring the best out of her, dressing her in dazzling white silk, radiant with holiness. And that is how husbands ought to love their wives. They really are doing themselves a favor since they're already one in marriage. And I don't know about y'all, but that's convicting. It's an amazing responsibility to be given charge over the spiritual growth and development of your spouse. Right after getting married, my pastor in Champaign, Pastor BJ Tatum, used to do these men's classes every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. Men from the church would gather and we would just talk about the stuff that men deal with. And I'll never forget the day me and my pastor almost fell out because he said these words exactly. He said, if you have a problem in your house, it's your fault.
Ooh, come on.
I was like, wait a minute. Flag on the play. Hold on, homie. We go to bed at night, kiss you good night, wake up in the morning, she got an attitude, and that's my fault? What did I do in the middle of the night to be responsible for her attitude? I didn't do nothing. And what I learned over time is that a lot of the emotional fervor and a lot of the anger and disagreements often can be settled with someone taking the opportunity to just take a step back, take a breath and breathe and pray and allow God to speak. Now, some days that's her, some days that's me. And the goal is to try to be in step with the spirit so that if there is a disagreement, if there is any conflict or what have you, that you're so in step with the spirit that God will give you a word in that moment so that you can share that and allow space for you and your spouse to discuss it. But it's a challenge, man. I mean, you know, if I'm being transparent, I struggle in this area because I have my own. My father wasn't a super spiritual cat. Like he wasn't one of them dudes that walked around with a Bible all the time. He was born in 1933, and him and my mom have been married since I was born. Like they've been married since forever, and I've never heard him like quote chapter verse. That was never the tone in my crib. But I would see him take the heat out of an argument by just taking a step, just taking a breath and saying, now we on the same team. And that would dissolve a lot of that heat in that argument because somebody's got to remember that we're on the same team. And so that's what I have to offer. I just want people to understand that, yes, we're supposed to be spiritual leaders. We're supposed to pray for our wives and guide them spiritually, but ultimately they're responsible for their own spiritual growth too. We're responsible for creating the environment and setting the tone. But ultimately on that judgment day, God gonna call them and he gonna call us individually.
That's right.
Yes, we're one, but when that roll is called,
that's right.
we're going to be called individually. And so God's gonna ask me how did I do in dealing with my wife? How did I, all of those words that I just read, it's convicting, man. It's an awesome responsibility. I mentor cats and they're like, man, I can't wait to get married. I'm like, bruh,
Sir,
bruh, that you go ahead with yourself.
Good to tell you, yeah.
I would just want to list that for some consideration.
Good. Other men of God, you got some words of wisdom for us to follow that?
I just gonna say I concur. I agree with everything Minister Terrence just said. And the crazy thing about it, I think it's in 1 Peter chapter 3. It speaks on how the husbands, I'm paraphrasing, but it speaks on how the husbands is supposed to make sure everything is good with the wives so their prayers won't be hindered. So the other part, and I was like, nah, I gotta make sure everything good. So when I pray is heard, even though she's wrong, come on now. But that's what it boils down to as being the head, and what I've learned, and it was a hard pill to swallow when the Bible tells us that basically man is head of woman, and Christ is head of man, and God is head of Christ. So my thing is, okay, so now if Christ is head of me, I'm going to my boss when things ain't looking right, when we can't come to an agreement. And I've done this quite often. When me and Kena have a disagreement about something, one thing I do not like to do is continue to argue, because you never get nowhere. When she got her point and I got my point, then I don't like to continue to argue. I will step back and I will actually go pray about it. And actually, a lot of the times while I'm praying, I'm feeling things that I could have done a little different. And my thing was, why is it always me? Why am I always feeling like, why God, you always making me feel like I could have did this or I could have did that. But what I realized is, being that provider, that one that make that example, sometimes you do have to be that one to step back, be that one to come back with a different approach.
Right.
Also, at the same time, when you're doing that, God is actually working on her as well.
Absolutely.
From that point.
Absolutely.
So that prayer piece is the key. That's been the key. That's been the key the whole time. We have not had any, thank God, we have not had any huge blow-ups or anything like that. We've had disagreements, of course. We had arguments, of course, but at the same time, either she's been the one to step back or I've been the one to step back and, come back at a different time to try to come to a conclusion on it, and try to, not just leave something hanging, but at some other time we come back to the conclusion of it. But but that prayer thing is key.
Absolutely. And gentlemen, when I told you all before that I do marriage therapy, and one of the things, and I even throw this out when I do different forums, I talk about how counseling needs to happen pre-marriage, during the marriage, and even after you divorce, right? And also to always remember that with a marriage, it's three. You, the wife, and God. And if you always keep that as your center, right, then how can you go wrong? Right. And it makes sense that if God is our head and we're the head of our home, then we're role modeling on each level, right? If Jesus Christ taught us how to forgive and see the bigger picture, and then we do it, and then our wives do it for our children, and then our children learn the behaviors, because we just talked about kids pick up and they learn from what we do, and then it's a continuation, But think about our communities. A lot of us don't have dads in the home. Yeah. So again, like me, we had to find role models on a television screen. So that's why this lets me know we got a lot of work to do, especially with our spiritual and religion walk. Okay. Yes. All right. So next, let's go. Brother Michael.
Yes.
The protector. All right. The health of your family. Give us some good insight about those subject matters.
I think being a protector is something, again, that I struggled with.
Okay.
Because, as I say again, even though my parents were married for almost 40 years, the job of being a protector was not one that my stepdad really fulfilled. And I guess because my mom sort of fell into it. Once my dad died, well, it was just she and I. So there was nobody to protect her other than God and herself. And I was 4 years old, so I couldn't do any protecting. So I grew up accustomed to seeing, even after my mom married, like their finances were not unified. So, and that was because that was my mom's way of protecting herself. My stepdad was a bit of a spendthrift and wasn't very financially responsible. So she protected herself. And when I first got married, I really struggled with that because I thought, well, we're married. I provide, finances and money for the household. But being a protector, I just didn't quite grasp that concept. Being a protector in terms of, like I said, meeting my wife's emotional, psychological needs, helping her to feel safe, helping her to feel valued and cherished. My mom, I don't ever remember my stepdad taking my mom's car and putting gas in it. I mean, that's just, my mom just did that. And I grew up thinking that was natural. Well, my wife grew up in a household where her dad took care of everything with the cars, took care of, making sure gas was in the car, the maintenance on the cars, washing the cars, tending to all of anything broken in the household. That's how he was. But that's not what I grew up in. So it actually caused some tension in the marriage initially because she's expecting me to be more like her dad. But by the same token, I didn't grow up in a household where I saw that. Right. And so she would get really frustrated with me. And I had to make a concerted effort to change that. And I've gradually changed. But even now, I'll have to catch myself sometimes. Whoa, I've got to do a better job. So my job as a protector is to make my wife and the kids feel safe. And that doesn't just involve money. It involves setting the moral, emotional, psychological compass for the household, making sure everybody feels safe, making sure they feel like they can come to me and talk to me about anything. I'm modeling behavior. Like you were saying a minute ago, what you see, what you model for your kids, they're going to model it eventually. So my job as a protector is to model appropriate behavior for the household and protecting my kids from going astray. And so that's the way I see it. Being a protector is a really, really broad term.
Right. It has so many facets to it.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Any other comments regarding being the protector as the husband?
Now, like I agree with Mike.
Take you off mute.
Did.
One more time.
No. Okay. Got it. Yes. All right. Now, like I said, I agree with you, Mike. Being the protector, I always thought it was putting the dukes up and having to prepare and take care that way. But like you said, it's a much broader avenue that portion comes in. Like you said, putting the gas in the car. These are some of the things that we want our daughters to know so they know how to pick the man that they're supposed to be with. Right. So these are some of the traits that were passed on to us so that they knew who we were and what we were doing and saw the picture of being a provider, not just heard it, because we did it. And like I said, it was just natural response. So yes, and then you have women who take advantage of that because you are kind-hearted, because you try to do things the right way. But again, going back to Gino and Terrence, it becomes a spiritual thing then, to which we have to learn to deal with it on another level. Because like I said, the women see something different. When they're how would you say they get the television preacher that's supposed to be our husbands, and that's what they expect out of us. They see that and they go to church and that's what they're prepped for. But it's a rude awakening when, like you said, the two of us come together and have to work things out the right way, because now we both feel and now we both see that we needed to be protectors over all, not just ours.
Yeah.
So I agree. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that what we hear, and it's not a knock, but I'm just saying that, you know, to be real about it, majority of the churches out here is not coming at it from that perspective that we need to hear it from. You know, they coming at it from you know, a lot of the televangelists coming at it from a fairy tale perspective. And this is what a lot of the women think about. This is what a lot of women expect. But I believe that, you know, and this should come out in counseling and all of that, but I believe that as far as going back, what happened in your childhood and what did you see with your parents, all that should be discussed before you even come together to get married. So you know exactly where this man is, instead of, because if he came up with a different household and you expecting one thing and this man came up in another household, and you come together and you trying to figure out how come this ain't happening this way, you know, because I don't know about, you know, you all, but with me, I had a preconceived notion already. I already knew what marriage was supposed to be about before I got married. So I thought.
Okay.
So I thought, you know, and when it wasn't what I thought, and I'm just sitting back like, okay, now, you know, hey, this is supposed to be happening. This, she's supposed to be doing this. She's supposed to be doing that. You know, but when it didn't happen that way, and I'm sitting up here like, no, this is wrong. But going to find out, no, this is just how it's going to be with her. You know, I see my mom do one thing, and I expected that, but when that didn't happen that way, it happened another way. You know, it happened another way that turned out to be a blessing as well. So, but when you try to put it in a basket, certain things we are definitely supposed to expect. But when you try to put it in a basket and say it's got to be this way, it's got to be that way, you often come out wrong every time. Just about every time.
Right. Right. You know what, the input I want to give on protection is this, and it goes back to what we talked about with the other two P's of providing and partnership, right? We have to expect, and I think it's a realistic expectation that we both protect each other. Okay, we both protect each other. So if I'm married and I have a bad moment with my wife, she doesn't go out and gossip about me to her family and friends. Because if she does, that's not protecting me. Amen. Because now you vilified me to the community, right?
Yes.
And I'm just thinking about, and look, what did we just experience about a month ago? Do we think that Jada Pinkett protected Will Smith in that moment? In that moment, did she protect her husband? You know, with him trying to protect her, you know?
Yeah.
So it's important that we both do it. Even children protecting the parents and parents protecting the children. We all have to, us protecting one another, okay? And I think when as we practice that more often, it'll be second nature, right? All right, so now Mr. Sean is on you. You've been kind of quiet there, so now we're about to bring you up. I want you to talk about being an encourager of faith and confidence building.
Oh man, okay.
This is not my fault, it's on Dr. K.
Being an encourager, to me, that's something I'm going to probably talking about some of the points that you guys made, is creating that space, that safe space for your wife, for your spouse. That it's all about making her feel good about herself. And
Yes.
so you have to first create that space that will allow her to feel good about herself. It's lifting her up, you know, it's praising her, as Gino said, it's praising her, especially in public, right? I praise my wife all the time in public, man. Um, we may have some clothes behind the doors, no, I praise, but in front of everybody, even when I feel that she was wrong, the people who we're around would never know it, because that's not our time to confront her in front of them. They don't need to see that, because the moment they see that, it's the moment um, they see that problem going on in the household, or they see that it's a way for them to be disrespectful to your spouse and everything like that. So even when my wife is wrong or going through her thing, um, I'm going to praise her in the public, and we'll talk about it behind closed doors. Also, encouraging her, to me, meaning that allowing her to help me, you know, the Bible, God created the woman to be the helpmeet of the husband, and so, believe it or not, that makes her feel. That makes when wives get a chance to be that person in their husband lives, that encourages them. That makes them feel secure. That makes them feel good about themselves, because in fact they having a chance to put on that hat as to be, an encouragement to their husband. So when you allow her to just help you, we don't always have it right. We don't always get it right. So, what I'm saying, a lot of times we don't like to allow the wife to help us, because in fact we want to be that manly man, and say that we got it all together, but we don't all the time have it all together. So giving her, creating that space, allowing her that space to be that help me, that encourages her. So yeah, I'm definitely a praiser of my wife, man. I praise her in front of everybody. I praise her. She can be up. She loves to sing. She's a praise and worship leader. I will be the first one on my feet at a church. I'm the first one on my feet. I'm not gonna let what we always say, not gonna let the rocks cry out. I ain't gonna even let them rocks cry out, or the benches, or the pews, or anybody cry out for my wife before I cry out, before I praise her. And so that's how I look at it. As an encourager, man, I'll always make sure I'm creating that space for her to be comfortable, for her to be the queen that she is, and lifting her up and praising her, and just allow her to help me. Because of fact the Bible says that's her job, and so letting her be who the Bible created her to be, who God created her to be in my life. Yep. And what was the other part?
And the other part was, let's see, about you talked about it, the faith part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of touched on it. Just you tying in the word with all of that, believe in God. With her and I, man, we believe God for everything together.
Yeah.
It's not me by myself. It's not her by herself. It's we believe, and it's trusting each other to believe that, hey, this is what God wants. It's allowing her. Again, she trusts me, and I'm showing her, hey, I got this. Through the help of God, we got this, and so it's believing God together. That's that faith piece that comes in. We believe God together in everything that we do. We believe God. It may not be perfect. A lot of y'all in here, I mean, most of you guys have been married more than us in here. So I can't wait to get to 20 some years and get to those years in marriage, man. We looking forward to our 20th next year. We celebrate 19th of June. So I can't wait to come and be the old school dude, like, yeah, I've been married 25 years, But yeah, it's believing God together and doing things together.
Yeah.
Dr. K.
Right.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Our queen is in the room. How's this been going for you, Lady K?
This has been amazing. All the truth that came out on this here telecast. That
Right.
was really good, guys. Really good. I knew Mr. Khalid, the busiest therapist there ever was in America. I know he will eventually have to go, but some very good points. Definitely some learning points, and allowing you all to speak your truth has been an amazing and refreshing thing to watch. I know T was like, "Why did she give me that question?" But it was not on purpose. It was just as I was typing, that's what was flowing, um, and so I appreciate each one of you all. I celebrate each one of you all. Khalid and I talked a little bit before you guys got on today, and just how the things would flow. And I knew you guys would, get on a tangent and go with it. But most importantly, you all spoke from your hearts, and I appreciate the authenticity of it, right? Because a lot of times you all don't get together and talk. And for people to actually hear your heart and understand how tough it is. Now, we won't even talk about being a black male. We're just talking about being a husband, and that piece of your lives is just a portion of your lives. But so I just wanted to say from my heart to you all, thank you so much. And thank you for your wives that helped me coordinate to get you on here. And so we're going to do this again. There's other subject matter that I think is so important for men, and especially my black men who I support, who I celebrate, to have a point to celebrate you all and to give you a place of authenticity and a safe place to speak truth.
Amen.
So we're going to tackle some other subjects. This is just the first tipping of the iceberg, but there's other things that we're going to talk about definitely. And just to give our viewers a chance to understand, we are going to talk about infertility from a male's perspective, from a husband's perspective, because I couldn't find one article from a male's perspective. That is crazy. So we're gonna bring that up as well, and just fatherhood in general, right? We touched on little bitty parts of it, but you could do a whole show forever on fatherhood, right, Khalid?
Absolutely.
Raising a daughter versus raising a son, two different things in this 2022 era that we're in. So there's a lot of things that we can talk about. I invite you guys to come back if you want. But I just appreciate you all for coming on, and thank you, Khalid, for doing the hostess with the mostest as you only can do.
Absolutely.
But any closing remarks? Go for it.
You know what? I wanted to ask one favor of each of the husbands on the panel. You're sitting in a room talking to a 27-year-old young man who's engaged. I want you to give him one piece of advice. So let's start with you, Gino. What would your advice be to that 27-year-old engaged young man?
Wow.
With a bang.
Really? Let me get off of here.
Now, actually, the way things are now, that's a hard question. But what works is putting God first. And I would say that till the end of time. And when I say putting God first, I don't mean just, pray about something and then run into it, but actually being led by God.
Yes.
If she's the right one.
Right.
I went through a lot, beforehand, praying and asking God before I met Kena, is she the right one? Is she the right one? If she's not the right one, show me. And every single time he showed me. Crazy. That's a whole nother story there. But putting God first and making sure that this is something that he wants to do. And not just look at it from a physical standpoint.
Absolutely.
But laying out all of the things that we talked about. What is a provider? What does it mean to be the head of the home? And all the responsibilities that come along with just being a man.
Right. Absolutely. Sean, what would be the one piece of advice
Well,
you would give that 27-year-old?
that was more than one I gave, but
Northern area.
The first thing I would ask him, I would say why. I just want to why you want to do this. You know, I would be the devil's advocate. Probably I wouldn't be the one to come in that room with him because of the fact by the time I'm done, you'd be like, I don't know now. You know, because because like Gino said, you got to be sure, right? There's no room for error, man. You don't. It's because in these days and times, it's so easy to fall into other diverse temptation, other things. So you got to, why? What's your purpose of doing this? Be sure. But the piece of advice I would give them is to always communicate. Communicate. I'm talking about. They may know their ABCs, but hey, let's go over them together.
Got
it. I can assume that you know your ABCs, but let me hear that you know your ABCs. Let's find out if we know. It's communication. It's become understanding each other. So yep.
Good.
But that why is important.
Gotcha. Minister Terrence, one piece of advice you would give that 27-year-old engaged young man.
Deal with your dysfunction.
Woo!
Deal with your dysfunction.
Wow.
It's gonna come up. It's gonna come up. Deal with the funk in your dysfunction.
Deal with the funk in your dysfunction. What?
Fred did that. Yeah. Wow. Why, Minister Terrence? Why?
Because you want the person that you're marrying to marry the authentic you, not your representative.
Yes, sir.
And so you really need to understand at a very deep soul level who you are, why you are the way you are. When I was growing up, my father hated when people slammed his car door. Never understood why. I hate when people slam my car door.
Right.
I get it now. You know what I'm saying? Understanding the little nuances about your personality and why you're built the way you're built is going to help the relationship start on as firm a foundation as possible. When you factor in all the faith and Bible and mentoring and all of those things, none of that matters if you haven't really dealt with who you are at a soul level.
Reason.
And so that's what I would say. Deal with the funk in your dysfunction, brother.
Love it. Brother George, what would your piece of advice be to that 27-year-old fiance?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
No regrets. Plain and simple. If you're going to go into it, no regrets. Anything can happen. You're learning each other. So if you're going to do it, go into it with no regrets. There's nobody wrong. We're going to learn it together. No regrets.
Wow.
Yeah.
Love it. Brother Mike, come on.
I would tell them conflict is coming. Lead by serving. And the reason why I say that, with my marriage now, if I really, really serve and focus on my wife's needs in front of mine, I would probably say 90% of the conflicts that we have and conflict is coming will never take place. It's just about putting that person's interest before yours, knowing your spouse, anticipating, and serving her first. And it just makes for a much, much more peaceful household, marriage, all the way around. So lead by serving.
Absolutely. So now let me wind this down. Gentlemen, this was so phenomenal. This was phenomenal. And my advice to that 27-year-old young man sitting there is, young blood, listen. Have you had the best love affair of your life? And I want him to say, huh? Well, maybe it's with my fiance. No, it's with you. I want you to be in love with you. Because when you are in love with you, right? It's like eating from the sweet tree. You don't ever want the sour fruit ever again because you know how sweet the fruit tastes. And when you're in love with you, You don't have time for drama, mess, dysfunction, right?
That's
You
true.
want everything in order because you know what good love feels like because you give it yourself. And when you're able to give it to yourself and you your own worst critic, right? You'll give it so much better to everybody else and you'll require it. You'll require it. We got to start requiring good love from one another.
That's real.
Man, I'm preaching up in here, okay?
Yeah, that's real. That's real. No, that's yes, sir. That's real. Yes,
okay.
Sir.
That's how I'm going to get that.
That's right. That's love. That's real, bro. Yes,
Wait
sir.
till you see my comment, Khalid. I say you're gonna get married before you know it. But anywho, that's a discussion between me and Khalid on a different day.
Right.
But those comments, my God, oh my gosh, those nuggets right there. Dysfunction, service, loving on you first. Oh my gosh. Conflict's gonna come. Man, just all of you guys gave such wisdom. And you said 101 years, I think, Khalid?
101 years, yes.
Wow. That's a wealth right there.
Right.
That's a wealth right there. That's a mouthful right there. So anybody out there, male or female alike, you can take some nuggets from here for real. You can take some nuggets. Even if you have been married for a while, you can still take some nuggets from these men.
No doubt.
So again, we appreciate you. We appreciate you, Khalid, for hosting this segment because only men can host other men. That's just my personal opinion.
Absolutely.
It's a different flavor when men get together amongst men. And so I wanted to celebrate that. I wanted to appreciate that. And I want you all to know that I appreciated you to create this platform for you. So thank you, because HUSBae did really speak today. Let me just say, he spoke 101 years of wisdom. So thank you, Michael, Attorney Michael. Thank you, Minister Terrence, my T, my frat. Thank you, Big G. My love. Thank you, Sean. That's a minister over there, too. You know what? We are not about to have no D9 fight on this call. We got a Q over here with Michael. We got Sigma over here with Sean. And we got 2 A5A. And we got some Me 5 Me with George and Trisha. We are not about to have the D9 fight.
This was wonderful.
This was wonderful. Thank you, George.
All right. It's been wonderful.
Brett, Khalid. Thank you all. And until next time, what's this, April? So May, we're doing mother and daughters. In May, we're doing mother and daughters. The weightiness of the weight in all things. So come expecting some deep conversations between mothers and daughters. Amen?
Amen.
So I'll beseech you until next time. Bye.
Bye, guys.
All right.
Enjoyed it.
All right. I did, honey. We did already.
Stay on, y'all.
Wow.
I'm trying to stop this video.
How you doing?
Stop it.